Hey, Olive, Arlo, and Frank. Greetings from Grandpop in Yellow Bluff Historic State Park. I talked about it a little last time, so I won't go into it again. In the last video, we looked at how an athlete lives, a successful athlete. And you should be an athlete. I've been an athlete since I was in my 30s. It was sometime in the 1980s when I was a cop and I saw that I was a big fat blob and I decided to do something about it. And so I've lived a life that, I even wrote a book about how to stay fit by running. It's called Run for Your Life. It's available on Apple Books for $5. So, one thing that I did not mention last time is under what is available to you. There's certain books, and I was thinking that they were all going to be on this lecture, but I did have one here that helped me maintain my physical fitness. And it's called Extreme Sports Training, and you can see by looking at this is it's for people who surf and ride a skateboard and stuff like that, and it has all kinds of things in here about stretching and maintaining your fitness level and building strength for extreme sports. So you can see at the top there's a surfer, a skateboarder, a mountain biker who's one of these guys that flips up into the air, and a snowboarder. See that at the top? So that's a really good book. It's by a guy named Coach Davies, John K. Davies, and I bought it online. I used to watch his videos. I still have one of his videos that's about yoga for extreme athletes, and it's called Pink, the New Black. So one of you will inherit that. Probably Arlo, because I'm sure your dad will go like, oh, I want the extreme sports training and the Pink, because he's familiar with it. So we left off with just the physical part of your life, but let's get into the rest of the parts of your life. Now, Frank, you're 22. Maybe you're in school now. I haven't talked to you in quite some time. And maybe you're not, but maybe you will go back to school. I was in my 60s by the time I got my master's degree. So school is a lifelong thing. So let's talk about being an athlete in school. And I don't mean being a physical athlete. I mean using the principles that we looked at before. Having a goal. Having a plan for that, from that goal, which encompasses the near future, the mid-future, and far, maybe 5 years into the future. It'll be a little different. We'll get into that in a minute. And then putting that into action, coming up with a routine and taking the first step. So we're going to ask the same question we did. In school, what is your goal? Now, you're not going to be talking about 5 days from now, 5 months, and 5 years from now, because school isn't set up that way. It's going to be based on assignments you're given, tests that are coming up. Your goals are going to be, your plan based on your goals are going to be like, how can I succeed in this class? How can I succeed this week with the classes that I have? How can I succeed this semester? How can I succeed with this degree? How can I succeed in this school? Those kind of things. It's going to be a little different, but it's the same principle. You're going to look at the near future and the mid-future. So you first start a class off. You want to pass the first test. You want to do the first assignments. That's your first part of your plan. But then you're going to have a midterm, and then you're going to have a final. So you have to set up your life based around those things, and then you have to commingle them with all the other classes. If you're taking multiple classes, you're going to have to fit all that stuff into your schedule. If you have to go out and work to be able to afford school, you're going to have to fit work into your schedule. If you have a family, you're going to have to fit them into your schedule. But you can do this all as an athlete lives their life. So, what's your goal? Mine, I don't have a goal right now. I'm not thinking of going back to school. Yours could be, I want to go to auto mechanic school. I want to get a PhD in philosophy. It could be anything. So then you have to say, what's available to me? Well, the first thing that you have to decide when looking at what's available to you is, how do you learn best? You know, do I like to watch things, hear things, read things, or have somebody sit down and show me how to do things? You have to figure that out, and then you have to look for the things that'll help you. So there's study halls, there's study groups, there's online help, there's self-testing, you can buy books. There's all kinds of things that you can do. And then figure out your first step and do it now. If you're not in school, but you want to be in school, you need to look up what you want to do. You need to figure out what school you want to be in. And then take that first step. Trust me, you'll never regret taking a chance in your life if you're following your heart. So in school, you have to have a study guide for yourself. You need to have a planner where you schedule your studies. You need to evaluate that planner from time to time. I'm not going to spend time telling you how to plan it. You're going to have to figure that out. Just get out a piece of paper and say, these are the classes, these are the assignments, these are the midterms, these are the finals. And then start figuring out, well, this is what I have to do to get there. And then take the first step. Evaluate it from time to time. One thing that's really important when you're studying for school is to take breaks. It's very similar to getting enough rest as an athlete. You have to get rest as a I don't want to say intellectual athlete, because we're going to talk about your intellectual life, but as a studying athlete, it's very important to take rest and let your brain figure out what it is you were just trying to learn. And once again, you need sufficient rest. You need to get enough sleep. Don't be burning the candle at both ends and expect to have a 4.0 grade point average. Next, let's look at being an athlete at work. So, what's your goal? Well, my goal right now is to my work is to make these videos for you guys. I'm not making any money doing it, and that's fine. I don't need to make money doing it. I just need to tell my story to my grandchildren in my words, and to give them advice on how to live their lives. And I'll be happy if I complete the amount of videos that I think I want to get done. Things like this always grow. But you have to ask yourself, what is your goal? You know, is your goal to become a millionaire? Is your goal to have a steady job? Is your goal could be one of many things. Well, you want to go back to the 5-day, 5-month, 5-year approach. It doesn't have to be exactly that. You can come up with whatever plan you want to have. And you say, how do I get there? You know, what's available to me? We're asking the same exact questions. How do I get there? Well, what's available to me right now? if you have a job already, can you get what your dreams are by staying there? Or do you have to leave? And first off, you're going to have to figure out, well, what is my dream? So right now, you may have a dream and you may not have a dream. But you should. You should always be wishing upon a star, because you never know where it's going to take you. Another thing that's really important is your dream. Is it something that you can get at work, or is it something that you want to do outside of work that becomes available because of your work? So here's the thing. I'm just winding up my short-lived diving career. Diving's a very expensive sport. And when you go on a dive trip with people, all they talk about is the exotic places all over the world that they've been to dive. Well, there's two ways that you can go on these trips. Number one is you could be a wealthy person and book the trips and go on them and buy all the expensive stuff. Or the other way is become a dive instructor and move from place to place. Now, you're not going to make a lot of money. Maybe you will. Maybe you'll wind up owning a dive operation someday. But you can go all over the world and be a master diver and teach diving to people and do that. I know people who do that. They work at a dive shop. They're very, very happy. They could make a lot more money someplace else, but they would do a lot less diving. So that's what they want. A friend of mine, Tim Bond, he works in appeals. He was in appeals with me in Miami. His son, TJ, I don't know how much he makes, but he works on a fishing boat. And maybe he makes a ton of money. I've never asked him about it. But I'll tell you something. Let's just pretend he doesn't make much at all. He's happy. I've never met anybody who liked their job as much as TJ Vaughn. He loves it. My advice to him would never be, you should get some job where you have to put a tie on every day and go into an office. Like, no. He's living his dream. But that is not for everybody. So you have to ask yourself that. Can I achieve my dream at work or through work? And as soon as you figure that out, a lot of other things become much, much easier. Once you figure it out, then you start to work on your plan. I want to get a better job. I want to get a different job. Whatever it is, have a plan, figure out your plan, take the first step. It's always going to be the same. Take the first step. At work, you already have a job, we'll say. And Frank, you may. Olive, you're not even born. Arlo, you're 3. As I said in another video, your job right now is figuring out that that prairie dogging is better than any other option available when you're prairie dogging. As soon as you figure that out and you go like, oh, I need potty now, that's your job. You'll go on to the next one, which is, putting on your own clothes every day and stuff like that. Your jobs are learning how to live life right now. But at work, you need to schedule your work. Just like you schedule your workouts, schedule your work. And if you're scheduling your work, then you're scheduling your workouts into that work. You want to have a balance between work and life. So another one of these things that we do for every one of these is evaluate from time to time. You know, maybe you're in Truck Island with some dive company and you're taking people underwater every day but you're miserable. Maybe you don't like living there. Maybe you don't like the people. Maybe you don't like how the people treat you that are in, crap. All these little leaf things are in my milkshake. I have to remember not to suck them down. Little squiggly leaf things, those things. You have to evaluate from time to time. If you're at a job and you don't ever get to go diving or surfing or riding your bike or running or just, like, all work and no play makes you a dull boy or girl. Trust me. Now the next thing I want to talk about is to be an intellectual athlete. So we were talking about school, and being an intellectual is a little different than that. School you do while you're in school. Being an intellectual is something that you should be all the time. The way you look at things, your worldview is what it's called. You know, I'm a Christian, and there's a lot of people who are Christians and they don't even understand why. I do. And an intellectual doesn't just look for the good. They discover the bad and then they evaluate it. That's how intellectuals work. It's kind of like being a scientist, a thought scientist. Well, let's go to the basics. What's your goal? I can tell you my goal. My goal is to muse rather than to be amused. So one of those things is active and one is passive. When you muse, it means you think. But when you are amused, it means that someone else is doing something to make you not think. Those words sound like they're related, and I always assumed they were, but they're not exactly related, but they fit so well. Like, amusement means to not think. So, you know, you watch a funny TV show or something like that, a YouTube video, like, oh, I hope you don't think that watching these things that I'm doing is amusing, but, you know, the bedtime stories, they're amusing. They're taking your mind off of the worries of your day. But I want to muse. I want to think about things rather than be amused. So when I watch TV, I like to watch intellectual things. I like to watch things about Shakespeare and world history and English literature. I like to read good books. I have a detective novel at home that I would love to read. I'll never read it. I'll be 170 by the time I get around to reading that, because there's just so much better stuff to read than a Harry Bosch novel. I want to think deeply about the important things of life, and I do that. So right now, I'm reading certain books. I just got done reading Ulysses. I'm reading a book of Grimm's fairy tales. I'm reading a book about how to spruce up your English grammar. And I have another book about gut biome that I'm just starting. And it's the same kind of thing. Like, you have to say, well, what do I have a book I want to read right now, and then what do I want to read next after that? It's not so much the 5 month thing. It's well, what do I want to read now? What do I want to read next? Sometimes you see a book and it's so cheap, but you don't want to read it now, but you will eventually. So you wind up having a bookshelf, and some of them are books you've read and some of them are books you haven't. So how do I get there? How do I live an intellectual life? You've figured out, well, this is the type of intellectual life I want to lead, and so what's my plan going to be? How do I get there? Well, once again, ask, what's available to me? There's a ton of books and online courses and online books. There's videos. There's all kinds of things about how to become intellectual in your thinking. Figure out your first step and do it now. Now, I highly recommend this book right here, The Intellectual Life. It's by a guy named A.G. Sertalange. He's some sort of a friar, or I forget, a monk of some sort. He's in the Catholic Church. It's called The Intellectual Life. It's Spirit, Conditions, and Methods. And there's all kinds of great stuff in this book. It tells you the organization of your life, how to schedule your work, how to prepare to do work, how to be creative in your work. There's things about how to memorize things and how to read the correct amount of things to learn something. So I said I'm reading 3 books at once. I don't have a stack with 3 books. I have one in the bathroom, one in the bedroom, and one in the living room where I study. So you want to evaluate from time to time. And when you figure out that those guys aren't coming to stop you from filming, everything's cool. I think they were as embarrassed as I was. So we have one last thing, and we're in 23 minutes into this, so let's just keep rolling along. Becoming a family athlete. So maybe you don't have a family. As a matter of fact, last time I talked to you, Frank, you didn't. I mean, you come from a family, but you don't have your own family yet. Well, before you have a family, maybe your goal should have something to do with putting yourself into a position to start a family. So what's my goal? My goal is to be the best grandpa, father, husband, and brother that I can possibly be to my family. The time frames aren't so much the 5-5-5, but it's soon and in the future. What do I want to be? Family stuff is everyday stuff. And all this athletic stuff, you know, you have to put in the work every day. But some of it, you're not going to go to school all the time. You're not going to be reading like intellectual books all the time. But you have to ask yourself the same question as a family member. You have goals. How do you get there? What's your plan? Ask once again, what's available to you? Well, in family life, your time and attention is the most precious thing to anybody. So spend some of your time and attention with those you love. Schedule things. Schedule date night with your wife, with your daughter. Make sure you're taking family vacations. Make sure you're there for them. You don't want to be an absentee parent. You know, they have helicopter parents now, but when I was younger, there were a lot of people that were like astronaut parents. You saw them every time they came back to Earth. And evaluate from time to time, and don't be afraid to change. And then, I said that was the last thing, but I was amiss. Last but not least, certainly not least, is be a spiritual athlete. In 1 Timothy, Timothy says, "Do not waste time arguing over godless ideas and old wives' tales. Instead, train yourself to be godly." Physical training is good, but training for godliness is much better, promising benefits in this life and in the life to come. This is a trustworthy saying, and everyone should accept it. This is why we work hard and continue to struggle, for our hope is in the living God, who is the Savior of all people, and particularly of all believers. Teach these things and insist that everyone learn them. Don't let anyone think less of you because you are young. Be an example to all believers in what you say, in the way you live, in your love, your faith, and your purity. Until I get there, focus on reading the scriptures to the church, encouraging the believers, and teaching them. So there's a lot of good information in there. But the reason that I picked that verse out is because it says, like, it's good to be a physical athlete, but a spiritual athlete, man, that's the goal. What's my goal? My goal is spend time with God each morning, to do my Through the Bible with Grandpa videos, and to spend more time with God every day, and become more like Jesus every day, although I continue to fall very short. Your time frames are now, soon, and in the future. You can boil it down to 555 kind of things, especially when you're younger. But for me right now, it's now, soon, and in the future. What's available? The Bible. There's a lot of books on spirituality. This is one that my good friend David Brewer gave me back in the 1990s, and it served me well. It actually looks pretty good compared to how much I've gone through it and read it. It's called To Walk in the Spirit, Essential Truths for Christian Living by Reverend Ward Brandon Stein. Highly recommend it. It's out of print, but you can get it. There's Bible studies. There's a lot of online resources, but one caveat is be careful where you get your information. If you decide that the Christian life is for you, go to a good Bible-believing church that teaches the Bible. Literally teaches it, not crazy stuff. You don't want to go someplace where people are biting off snakes' heads and stuff like that. Figure out your first step and do it. What's your plan? What do you need to put that plan into action and do it? Most importantly, if you have not given your heart to the Lord, do it now. Nobody's promised tomorrow. And schedule things like reading the Bible. It's easy to say, yeah, I'm going to follow Jesus, and then you never follow Jesus. Just go like, yeah, I'm following Jesus. Well, schedule it, just like you schedule everything else. Be an athlete. Be a spiritual athlete. Evaluate from time to time. And remember, in every part of your life, have a goal, a plan, put in the work. Take the first step and put in the work every day. And you will be a successful athlete in every part of your life. Peace out.